Welcome back to This is Thailand. If you've been with us for a while, you know what this channel is. Stories from men who came here chasing something, a fresh start, a second chance, a bit of warmth in their later years, and found out the hard way that Thailand doesn't always give you what you came looking for. Sometimes it gives you something else entirely. Most of the stories we tell here have an obvious shape to them. You can see the machinery working, the bar, the girl, the sob story about the sick buffalo, the slow bleed of money heading up country. Viewers write in and say, how did he not see it? And sometimes the honest answer is, he didn't want to. Brendan is 61 years old. He's from County Roscommon in the west of Ireland. He spent 41 years as a bricklayer, schools, churches, farm walls, the kind of work that leaves its mark on your hands and your knees and not much else. He didn't come to Thailand for the nightlife. He didn't come for a young girlfriend or cheap beer or the fantasy of being a big man in a small place. He came because his wife died, and then his house sold, and then one day he found himself sitting in a bungalow with nearly 200,000 euro, and nothing in the world he wanted to spend it on. What happened to Brendan in the 14 months that followed, this one is going to stay with you. Here's his story. In his own words, I'll start at the beginning, because I think that's the only way it makes sense. I left school at 15. Not because I was thick, well, maybe a bit thick, I won't argue, but because my father knew a man who needed a laborer on a housing scheme outside Roscommon town. And that was that. You didn't deliberate much in rural Connacht in 1978. You went where the work was. I carried hod for 2 years, then got taken on proper as an apprentice bricklayer. And that was my life sorted. 41 years of it. Schools, churches, council estates, extensions, the walls of farms that'll still be standing when whoever's left after me is long gone. I was good at it. I wasn't the fastest, but I was level. Mary used to say I could lay a straight course in my sleep. Mirador. Right. I'll have to talk about her properly, so I will. We met at a dance in Strokestown in 1990. She was 22, I was 27, and I hadn't a clue what I was doing. We married the following year. No children. That was a grief we carried between us for a long time. And eventually we just stopped carrying it out in the open and got on with things the way you do. She taught in the primary school in town. She was the noise in the house, the smell of something on the stove, when I came in. The reason I cleaned my boots before I came through the door, 28 years of that, I didn't appreciate it the way I should have. I don't think anyone does until it's gone. The cancer came in 2019. Breast cancer. Caught late enough that the prognosis was never good, but early enough that we spent 4 years hoping. I became her carer in the last 18 months. That word, carer, doesn't really cover what it is. It's hospital runs at 6 in the morning. It's medication schedules written on a whiteboard in the kitchen because you don't trust your memory anymore. It's learning to do things you never thought you'd have to do, practical things, intimate things, without making her feel diminished by needing you to do them. It's being the healthy one in the house, which sounds like the easier job and isn't. She died on a Tuesday in March 22. Quietly, which I was grateful for. I held her hand. I don't know what else to say about that. I stayed in the house for 14 months after. People were kind. The parish, the neighbors, her colleagues from the school. There were casseroles. There were mass cards. My sister rang every Sunday for 6 months, which I know was love, and which I also know I wasn't very good at receiving. I went to the grave. I watched television. I went back to the grave. The china in the good press, Myers china. A full set she'd been given by her mother. I couldn't pack it, and I couldn't look at it, and I couldn't throw it out. So I just closed the door of that press and didn't open it again. I sold the house in May of 2023. It went for a bit more than I expected. Things had gone up, the way they'd gone up everywhere, and when it was all settled, I had 198,000 euros sitting in an account. I want to be clear about what that number meant to me. I'm a bricklayer from Roscommon. I'd never in my life had more than maybe 8 or 10,000 set aside at any given time. I had a small state pension coming eventually, at 66, and that would cover the basics. But 198,000 euro, that was an amount of money I had no language for, no relationship with. I didn't know what men like me were supposed to do with money like that. My nephew Ciaran is a good lad. A bit restless, always was. He backpacked around Southeast Asia when he was 22. Spent time in Vietnam and Cambodia and Thailand, and he's never quite stopped talking about it. Works in IT now, up in Dublin, but you get a few drinks into him, and out comes the story about the full moon party on Koh Phangan or the motorbike he hired in Chiang Mai and nearly killed himself on coming down a mountain road. Good stories. I'd heard them a dozen times. It was Ciaran who showed me the Facebook group. Retire Happy in Thailand, it was called. I sat with his phone for about 10 minutes going through it. Men my age, a lot of them older, posting photographs of themselves eating noodles at street stalls, or sitting by swimming pools, or standing in front of Buddhist temples with that particular expression that men get when they feel they've discovered something. I'd heard the stories, obviously. Every pub in Ireland has a version of the story. Some poor Egypt who handed his life savings to a Thai girl half his age who had a husband and 2 children back in the village. I wasn't that man. I knew I wasn't that man. But Kieran was careful about how he put it to me. He didn't say Pattaya. He said Chiang Mai. Different altogether, he said. Up in the north, near the mountains. Old temples, markets, a big expat community, mostly retired people. Cultural. Calm. Not like, and he paused here in a way that told me he'd thought about how to say this, not like that other thing, Uncle Brendan. Nothing like that. I booked a 3-month tourist visa in October of 2023. First impulsive thing I'd done since I was 15 years old and took a job on a housing scheme. I told myself it was a trial. A look around. If it was wrong for me, I'd know in a week and I'd come home. I landed in Chiang Mai on the 12th of January 2024, came out of the airport, and the heat hit me like a wall. 34 degrees in January. I stood there on the pavement with my case, and I thought, right, grand, let's see what this is. I had no idea what it was, not yet. The apartment was on the 4th floor of a building just off Niman Road, about a 10-minute walk from the old moat that rings the city center. 12,000 baht a month, roughly €320, for a clean room with air conditioning, a small kitchen, a bed that was fine, and a window that looked out onto a tangle of power lines and, beyond them, the top of the temple roof that caught the light in the evenings. I'd looked at a few places through a Facebook group before I arrived. Booked it for a month, thought I'd see. I renewed it every month for the next 6. The first week I mostly walked. That sounds simple, but it was the whole of it, those first days. I walked from the apartment down toward Niman in the mornings, past the spirit houses outside every shop and guest house, past monks in orange robes collecting alms in the early light before the heat built up, past women grilling mu ping on little charcoal braziers. The smell of it, pork fat and lemongrass, something you could eat before you'd even decided to stop. I wasn't a man who'd done much walking for pleasure. In Roscommon, you walked between your car and wherever you were going. Here I walked for hours, and nobody knew me, and nobody wanted anything from me. And that was, I discovered, exactly what I needed. I ate at the market stalls mostly, pointed at things, got it wrong sometimes, spent a week thinking I'd ordered chicken when I'd been eating something else entirely. I still don't know what. Grand. It was grand. 30 baht for a plate of cow pad, which is fried rice, which I ate standing up at a counter on a street I couldn't name, sweating into my shirt, and I remember thinking, this is the least miserable I've felt in 2 years. That probably tells you something about the previous 2 years. I want to be honest about what those first weeks were. They weren't happiness. I don't want to overstate it. It was more like the volume had been turned down. In Roscommon, the quiet was loud, if that makes sense. It was full of the specific absence of Myre. In Chiang Mai, the noise was everywhere. Motorbikes, construction, somewhere always, the clatter of the market, dogs, roosters at all hours, and somehow all that noise was easier than the quiet had been. I was anonymous. Nobody looked at me with that particular gentle wariness the people at home had developed, the way they'd scan your face before saying anything to check how you were doing. Here I was just a tall Irish fella with bad tie and a sweat problem. It was a relief. I found a coffee shop on Niman Road that I liked. Decent coffee, air conditioning, good Wi-Fi, run by a young Thai couple who were friendly without being hovering. I started going there most mornings. That's where I met Alistair, a retired Scottish accountant from Perth who'd been in Chiang Mai for 4 years and had the particular manner of a man who has found his equilibrium and is mildly suspicious of anyone who hasn't yet. He was useful. He told me about the 90-day reporting requirement. You have to check in with immigration every 90 days when you're on a long-stay visa. Let them know you're still there, still alive, not working illegally. He told me where the good wet market was for fruit. He told me to stay away from the tourist restaurants around the night bazaar, where they'd charge you 3 times the price for half the flavor. Small, practical things. I was grateful. The Niman Sunday market started at about 4 in the afternoon and ran until 9 or 10 at night when the street stalls packed up and the restaurants took over. It filled the swa around the main road with people, tourists, students from the university, families, monks buying vegetables and civilian clothes off the clock, old men playing chess under makeshift canvas, children eating mango sticky rice in quantities that should have been medically inadvisable. I went the first Sunday out of curiosity. I went the second Sunday because I had nothing else to do. By the third Sunday, it had become a routine, which, for a man like me, is another word for comfort. The stall was about halfway along the second row, northern Thai food, the kind with a slightly different spicing you get up here compared to Bangkok, less coconut milk, more of the herby bitterness, sai ua, which is a kind of sausage with lemongrass and galangal that I'd tried and liked, kal swa, the curry noodle soup that Chiang Mai is famous for, a deep orangey yellow with egg noodles and pickled mustard greens on top. There was an older woman cooking and a younger one taking orders and managing the money. The older one was small and deliberate, with the kind of focused efficiency of someone who has cooked the same things well for decades. The younger one, Nok, I'd learn later, had a way of talking to customers that was easy without being performed. She joked with the regulars. She didn't fuss. The first Sunday I pointed at the saiua and held up 2 fingers. She said, in English, that good choice, and smiled, which was not a flirtatious smile, just the smile of someone who knew their food was worth eating. I ate standing at the edge of the stall. The second Sunday I ordered the khao swa and she said, you come back, and I said yes, and that was the whole of the conversation. The third Sunday I came back and she said, you like northern food, and I said, I think so. And she said, what you try so far, and I listed the things, and she shook her head at a couple of them and said she'd make me something else, and she did, and it was very good. That was it. That was the whole of how it began. I didn't get her name that Sunday. I got it the Sunday after, when she asked me mine. Brendan, I said me mine. She said it carefully, the way Thai people do with foreign names, testing the shape of it. Brendan. Then she pointed at herself and said, Knockout like the bird? I said I'd picked up that much Thai by then. She looked faintly surprised and said yes, like the bird, and then a customer wanted paying, and the conversation was finished. I walked home past the moat in the dark, the water lit up orange from the lights along the path, bats flicking overhead, the smell of incense drifting from somewhere. I thought about nothing in particular. I thought it was a nice evening. That was all. I think about that walk sometimes, the simplicity of it. A man who just had a nice evening. Nothing more than that. We didn't rush into anything. I want to be clear about that because I think it matters. I was 61 years old. I'd spent 4 years watching my wife die, and the last thing I was going to do was throw myself at the first woman who was kind to me. I had some dignity left. Not much, maybe, but some. We started meeting for coffee. Not at my place on Nemen, somewhere neutral, a little cafe near the old moat with wooden tables outside and a ceiling fan that worked about 70% of the time. She'd finish at the Sunday market, and sometimes, on a Wednesday, she had a half day when her mother ran the stall alone, and we'd sit there for an hour or two and talk. Her English was better than she let on at the market. She'd learned it years ago from a boyfriend, she said, and then she didn't explain further and I didn't ask. I thought that was fair. She didn't explain further and I didn't ask. I thought that was fair. She didn't ask about Mary either, not at first. We talked around the edges of our lives, safe things, the market, the city, the weather, which was always hot and which I complained about and she found genuinely funny. I noticed the things that weren't happening. She didn't ask about money. She didn't ask what I'd done for work or why I'd come or how long I was staying or whether I owned property back home. These are the questions I gathered from the Facebook group and from Alistair that arrive quite quickly sometimes. She didn't ask them. She asked if I'd been to Doi Suthep yet, the big temple up in the mountains above the city. And when I said no, she said she'd take me. And she did, on a Saturday in late March, and we walked up the 300 steps with all the other tourists, and she pointed out things I wouldn't have noticed, and I bought us cold coconut water from a vendor at the top, and we sat looking out over the city and the haze below, and it was a very nice day. I met May Sum properly at the stall in April. Nok introduced me as a friend, which was what I was. And May Sum looked at me with the frank assessment of a small Thai woman of 70 who has no interest in pretending to be anything other than what she is, and then apparently decided I was acceptable and handed me a piece of sei yua from the grill. She called me Phi after that. It means older sibling, a term of respect and familiarity combined. I looked it up. It pleased me more than I'll admit to. There was something about being called Phi by a 70-year-old woman feeding you sausage off a charcoal grill that was, I don't know. It just sat well. May, June. We had dinners. A few times at a small Isan place near her apartment run by a family from Udon Thani, proper northeastern food, fiercely spicy. She laughed watching me negotiate the larb the first time, that raw meat salad with the toasted rice powder and the chili that climbs up the back of your throat. She was easy company. She didn't perform happiness for me, that's what I keep coming back to. She was just herself. Sometimes a bit quiet, a bit elsewhere. But she always had been, and I'd attributed it to private life. To the first marriage she didn't talk much about. To the ordinary weight people carry. 3 months in, the end of May, she stayed over for the first time. I'm aware that's information people will process how they like. I'll just say it felt like the right pace for two people who were both, in their different ways, being careful. There was nothing rushed about any of it. I told myself that was meaningful. And maybe it was. I'm still not entirely sure it wasn't. The money thing, the first one, came in June. The landlord of the market had raised the stall rent, not enormously, but enough that it was cutting into what she made on Sundays. She mentioned it the way you mention something that's a problem, but not yet a crisis, just information. I don't remember her asking. I think I offered. 8,000 baht, a month for 2 months, 18,000 baht total, just under €500. I had nearly €200,000 in an account in Ireland. Do the mathematics yourself. She hesitated before she took it. That's the part one's gone over. She said no at first. She said it wasn't. She used a Thai word, krang jai, which means something like not wanting to impose, not wanting to cause awkwardness. She said she didn't want it to be like that between us. I said it wasn't like anything, it was just a help. She accepted it. And I watched that hesitation, and I thought, you see, that's the difference. A woman who hesitates. A woman who doesn't want to impose. I know what I was doing. I was building a case. I was assembling evidence that she was the right kind of person. Every time she didn't ask for something, I added it to the case file. Every dinner she paid for half of, every Sunday she arrived to the market already set up before I got there, every time she said, no, I'm fine, I have enough. It all went in the file. A bricklayer's job is to read a structure, to look at what's there and assess it. You develop an eye for what will hold and what won't. I thought I was using that eye. I thought I was being careful. And maybe I was being careful, in one direction, but I was only looking at what was in front of me. It didn't occur to me to ask about what had come before. It didn't occur to me to ask why, at 43, with her own income and her mother beside her and a life that seemed settled, her first marriage had ended. I knew it had. I just never asked what broke it. That's the thing I'd go back and change, if I could go back and change one thing. One question. That's all it would have taken. One question asked on any one of those evenings at the place by the moat. The fan half working overhead, cold beer sweating on the wooden table between us. I didn't ask it, she didn't volunteer it, and we were both, in our different ways, fine with that arrangement. May Sam's hip had been bad since before I arrived, I think, though nobody mentioned it until July. Nock brought it up on a Tuesday evening, at the apartment. While I was making tea, I'd found a place near Maya Mall that sold decent Irish breakfast tea, which I'm not ashamed of, and she said it in the way she said most difficult things, which was quietly and without preamble. Her mother's hip. The pain was getting worse. The public hospital had assessed her and put her on a waiting list. 6 months minimum, probably longer. And she, Nock, would need to spend more time helping her at the stall in the mornings, which would mean closing earlier some days, which would affect the income. She wasn't asking me for anything. I want to be precise about that. She was explaining a situation, I heard myself say. What would the private hospital cost? She looked at me for a moment, then she said she didn't know exactly. She hadn't looked into it because she didn't think, and I said, go and find out. So she did. 140,000 baht, the procedure and the recovery, about €3,700. About €3,700. I'd watched Myre wait on lists. I know exactly what it is to sit across from someone in pain while a system processes paperwork at its own pace. I've sat in those rooms. I know the particular sound a person makes when they shift position and it costs them something. I transferred the money within a week. I didn't negotiate or deliberate or ask anyone's opinion. I just did it. The surgery was in August at a private hospital off the superhighway, one of those clean modern places with a lobby that looks more like a hotel than a hospital, and nurses who smile at visiting Farang with professional warmth. Mason was in and out in 3 days. I visited once, brought fruit from the wet market, the good one Alistair had told me about, and Mason held my hand and said something in Thai that Nock translated as she says, "You are a good man." I nodded. I didn't say anything. What do you say to that? She recovered well. Was back at the stall inside 3 weeks, moving more easily, though Nock still did the heavy lifting. The family, and here is where the family enters the story properly, were grateful in ways I didn't quite know what to do with. Nock has 3 sisters. Dao is the eldest, lives near Lamphun, about 30 kilometers south of Chiang Mai, and runs the family matters with the efficiency of someone who has been doing it her whole life. Pin is the middle one. Cheerful, works at a hotel in town, speaks almost no English but communicates entirely through expressions and food portions. And Juan, the youngest, whom I'll come back to. There's also a brother-in-law, Somchai, retired school teacher, who shook my hand with great formality the first time we met and then proceeded to drink 3 Leo beers and teach me a card game I still don't fully understand. The family gathering was in September, out at Dao's house in Lamphun. A Saturday. I arrived by Songthieu, which is a covered pickup truck with bench seats in the back that runs as a shared taxi. You flag it down, hop in, pay 20 baht. Very useful. I arrived at this house and there were, 15 people? Maybe more. Children in every direction. The smell of a proper northern Thai feast being assembled in the outdoor kitchen, tom kha with galangal so sharp it caught the back of the throat, sticky rice in woven bamboo baskets, grilled pork that had been marinating since the night before. Dao pressed food on me before I'd sat down. Somchai opened beers. The children practiced their school English on me, and I practiced my 4 words of Thai on them, and everyone found this funnier than it deserved. I sat in the middle of all that noise and warmth, and I thought, I haven't sat in a room like this in a very long time. Mary and I had no children, no big family gatherings, no chaos of cousins. Her people were in Cork, mine were scattered. We had a quiet life, a good one, but quiet. This was nothing like quiet. It was intoxicating. I don't use that word to excuse myself. I use it because it's accurate. The marriage conversation came naturally, or felt like it did. We'd been together 6 months. My tourist visa was due to expire in October. I'd need to either leave and come back or change my status. Nok raised the marriage visa option practically, the way she raised most things, without dramatics. Under a non-marriage visa, I could stay without the visa runs, the border hops to Laos or Cambodia, the queues at immigration. It simplified things. And then she said something else, quietly, in a different voice than the practical one. I'm not going to repeat it exactly, but it was the kind of thing that, when a woman says it to you after you've been alone for 2.5 years, lands somewhere specific, and doesn't leave. We registered at the AMFO office in late September. Quiet. A few forms, a waiting room with plastic chairs, a civil servant who processed us with the same energy she'd have brought to processing a change of address. Dao came as witness. Alistair came because I needed someone there who knew me, and he stood in the waiting room in his good shirt looking mildly moved and slightly suspicious, which was about right. The sinsod, the bride price. I was prepared for this because Alistair had explained it and I'd read about it. Not all Thai families require it, but many do, and the amount depends on family history, the woman's status. Dao negotiated on behalf of the family. 200,000 baht in gold, about 5,300 euro. I was told, correctly, that it would largely be returned to us privately afterward. It was. All but about 30,000 baht, which stayed with me some. I paid it gladly. That's what I remember. Not reluctantly, not after deliberation. Gladly. Because it was the right thing to do by the culture I was now living in, and I wanted to do it right. Standing outside that amphi office afterward, Dao shook my hand. Nok's youngest niece gave me a drawing she'd done of what I think was a house with a very tall person standing outside it, and Mei Sumwai'd me with both hands pressed together and her eyes closed for a moment, which I think was as close as she got to solemnity. I thought, I've done something right. I had not. I want to tell you now, asked Dao what she knew about her sister's first marriage. I had not asked Somchai or Pin or any of the 15 people at that gathering in Lamphun who all, it would turn out, knew exactly what had ended it. I didn't ask because they were welcoming me into a family. You don't interrogate people who are welcoming you. That's not how Brendan from Roscommon operates. That's not, as it turned out, how you survive in Thailand either. After the wedding, I gave up the Niman apartment. Seemed pointless to keep paying for a place I was barely using. 12,000 baht a month for a room that mostly just held my spare boots and some paperback books I'd bought at the second-hand place near the old city. I moved what I had over to Nok's apartment in stages, which took approximately 2 trips in a grab taxi because I'd arrived in Thailand with one case and hadn't accumulated much beyond that. A man doesn't need much, is something I'd learned. But Nok had found a townhouse. She mentioned it a few weeks after the wedding, on a Sunday morning when we were having coffee on her small balcony, watching the street below come awake, the noodle vendor setting up her cart, a monk walking past in the early quiet, a dog investigating something with great seriousness. Nok said she'd seen a place, near Dao's side of things, out in the Hangdong area, south of the city. Quieter than Niman. A garden at the back, close to the market Dao used. She had her phone out with photographs already. I looked at the photographs already. It was a good-sized townhouse, 2 stories, reasonably modern, tiled throughout. Clean. The garden wasn't much yet, but it had potential. I noticed I was thinking about the garden. The price was 1,800,000 baht, about 47,000 euro. She said it matter-of-factly, the way she said most things, and then she said what I already knew, that under Thai law, a foreigner cannot own land. The property would need to be in her name. She wasn't presenting this as a choice or a negotiation. She was just stating the legal reality, which it was. I'd read about this months before. Plenty of expats do it. Some lose everything. Some don't. I thought about it for a few days. I talked to Alistair, who said what he always said, which was some version of, "You know the risk. I can't tell you what to do, but you know the risk." I went on an expat forum and read 12 pages of arguments going in both directions. I did the thing I do. I assessed the structure. I looked at what I could see, and I asked myself if it would hold. The law is the law, I told myself, but knock is knock. I transferred the funds in 2 installments in late September and early October. 900,000 baht each time. The paperwork was handled by a local lawyer Dow recommended. I was present for the signing, nodding at documents in Thai. I couldn't read, trusting the lawyer's explanations, trusting Knock beside me. We moved in at the end of October. The house was good. It was a proper home. Knock's things, my things, the furniture we'd picked together from a place out on the superhighway, a kitchen she was comfortable in, a table we sat at for meals, a small garden where I put 2 chairs and where, on cooler evenings, we'd sit with a Leo and watch the light go. For about 3 weeks, I thought, this is the rest of my life. This specific thing, right here. The first sign I noticed was the evenings. 2 or 3 times a week, Knock would say she was going to her sister's pins, she'd say, or Dow's thought sometimes she'd be back by 10, sometimes later. I didn't question it. Thai families are close, sisters see each other. It wasn't my business to clock her movements. She was a grown woman of 43 who had managed her life without my input for considerably longer than she'd managed her life without my input for considerably longer than she'd managed it with it. I wasn't going to start asking where she was going. But there were mornings, after those nights, where she wasn't quite herself, tired in a way that sleep didn't explain. A little distracted at the stall. I'd seen Mare have bad nights, a different kind obviously, a medicated restlessness, and I'd learned what the morning after a bad night looks like on a person. This was different to that, but it had the same quality of absence, the sense of a person being somewhere slightly behind their own eyes. I told myself she was processing things. The first marriage. Old sadness. I was generous with that interpretation. The joint account I'd opened at Bangkok Bank, near the immigration office on Mahito Road, practical for household things, bills, food shopping, began showing movements I couldn't account for, not enormous amounts. 30,000 baht here, 25,000 there. The sort of figures that don't alarm you individually. Over 10 weeks, October through December, I added them up one evening while Nok was out visiting her sister. 110,000 baht. About 2,900 euro. I wrote the figure on a piece of paper and looked at it. A bricklayer reads structures. I know what a wall looks like when it's moving. You don't always know why it's moving. You don't always know if it's movement that will stop on its own or movement that will continue until something gives. But you note it. You write it down. You don't pretend you haven't seen it because that's the thing that gets men killed on sites, deciding not to see what they've already seen. I asked her in December, a weeknight, sat at the kitchen table. I kept my voice level. I said I'd noticed some withdrawals from the account, and asked if there were some withdrawals from the account, and asked if there was something going on she wanted to tell me about. She was warm. She was always warm when I asked her difficult things, not defensive, not evasive in any sharp way, just warm and slightly apologetic. She said her sister Pin had a debt, a small one, from a while back, and she'd been helping sort it quietly. Family business. She didn't want to worry me. She'd explain when it was settled. I accepted that. I shouldn't have, but I did. And that night, I didn't sleep as well as I had the night before, and I noted that too. I didn't know, lying there in the dark listening to the dogs and the occasional motorbike on the road outside, that the house I was lying in had been used as collateral on a debt that predated me by more than a year. I didn't know that the 1,800,000 baht I'd transferred, my 47,000 euro, a quarter of everything I had gone not into a clean asset, but into a hole that was still open. I didn't know any of that yet. But something had changed in the quality of the quiet. It was the same quiet I'd been running from in Roscommon, and it had followed me here. January, the new year. 3 months in the house. I started keeping a notebook, not a diary. I've never been a diary man, just a small notebook where I wrote down dates and amounts. Withdrawals from the Bangkok bank account. I'd check it on my phone in the mornings, after Knock left for the stall, and write down anything that didn't match what I knew we'd spent. It was the most methodical I'd been about anything since I retired, and the act of doing it made me feel, I don't know how to put this, like someone I didn't particularly want to be. A man who tracks his wife's movements in a notebook. That's not who Brendan from Roscommon is. But I kept writing. By the end of January, the notebook had 6 weeks of entries, 110,000 baht I couldn't account for, which I already knew. But also 3 occasions when her phone was off for 4 more hours in the evening. 2 mornings when she came home at dawn saying she'd stayed at Dow's because it was too late to drive back. I hadn't known she'd gone to Dow's. She hadn't mentioned going. I want to be fair to her here. She hadn't mentioned going. I want to be fair to her here, even now. Thai families operate differently than what I'm used to. Coming and going, staying over with sisters, helping one another at odd hours. This is not unusual. It's normal. I knew this. I'd read enough and been in the country long enough to know that what would look suspicious in Roscommon might just be Tuesday in Chiang Mai. I told myself this repeatedly through January. I told myself it while I was writing in the notebook. I asked her again in February. A proper conversation this time, at the kitchen table on a Sunday morning. The market not until afternoon, both of us with coffee. I said I needed to understand what was happening with the account because the numbers weren't making sense and I couldn't keep telling myself they would. I said it as plainly as I knew how, without accusation, without raising my voice. I'm a man who's talked to foremen and clients and building inspectors for 40 years. I know how to raise a difficult point without making it a confrontation. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said it was her sister again, Juan this time, not Pin. Juan had gotten into some difficulty, a debt she was embarrassed about, and Nok had been helping. It was nearly sorted. She should have told me earlier. She was sorry. It was just, she used the word again, Kreng Jai. She hadn't wanted to create a burden. She'd tell me everything when it was settled. I looked at her across the table, the morning light coming in, the smell of the coffee. A gecko on the wall above the window doing what geckos do, absolutely indifferent to the two of us and whatever we were in the middle of. I said, all right. I shouldn't have said all right. But I did. Juan came to the house on a Tuesday afternoon in late February. I remember it was a Tuesday because the market had its midweek quiet, and Nok had gone to help my son with something. I was in the garden. I'd been doing a bit of work out there. Nothing ambitious, just tidying. The kind of physical task that's good for a man who used to work with his hands, and now mostly doesn't. I heard the gate. It was Juan. She was 29. She'd been the loudest one at the family gathering in Lamphun, the one doing impressions of Sanchai that had the children in tears of laughing. She was not that person on this Tuesday afternoon. She sat across from me at the kitchen table, and she had the look of someone who had made a decision that cost them something and was now committed to it. Her English was functional, careful. She chose words the way you choose footing on uncertain ground. She said she needed to tell me something about Nok. She said she was sorry. She said she had been trying to decide for a long time whether to say it or not, and she had decided that not saying it was worse. That was the shape of the introduction. Then she took her phone out. She showed me line messages. A conversation between Nok and a name I didn't recognize. A man from the context, though I couldn't read the Thai. Juan translated slowly sentences I won't repeat in full. Money owed. An amount. A date by which it was needed. A tone in the messages that made clear this was not a friendly conversation between two people who wished each other well. She showed me another screenshot. A ledger of some kind, columns of figures, names. Juan pointed to Nok's name. She said this was from a card game circle. Underground, she said. She used that word specifically. She said the amounts went back years. She pointed to a figure at the bottom. I couldn't read the number in Thai script, so she wrote it in numerals on a piece of paper. 380,000 baht, about 10,000 euro. That was the current outstanding amount, she said. After what had already been paid. I asked her how long. She held up both hands. 10 fingers. 10 years. I asked about Juan's own savings because she'd mentioned in passing that she'd used some. She said 85,000 baht. Her own money, spent paying people who had come to her door because of her sister, people she was frightened of, people who did not accept being told to wait. Then I asked about the townhouse. She looked at the table. A long pause. She said she didn't know everything. She said she knew the house had been. She searched for the English word, didn't find it, took her phone and typed something and showed me the screen. Collateral. That evening, I went to an expat forum I'd used before, a Chiang Mai property group. and I described the situation without naming anyone and asked what I was looking at. An Australian who'd been in the city for 12 years gave me a direct answer within an hour. He said if the property had been used as collateral on a pre-existing debt before transfer of funds, I'd effectively paid off someone else's claim without knowing it. He said I should get a Thai lawyer to check the land registry immediately. I got one the next morning. The answer came back the following day. The property had been encumbered. The lien predated my transfer by 14 months. I sat with that for most of a day. Just sat with it, in the garden, in the 2 chairs Nock and I had put out there together in October, the light going the way it does in the late afternoon in northern Thailand, the whole sky turning gold before the dark comes down fast. Nock came home at 7. I'd made tea. I waited until she'd sat down. Then I told her what I knew, piece by piece. The account, the notebook, Juan's visit, the line messages, the land registry. I laid it out in sequence, the land registry. I laid it out in sequence, the way I would lay courses, one thing, then the next. I kept my voice level. I watched her face. She cried. And I've thought about those tears every day since, because I genuinely don't know what they were. I think I know. I think she loved me, and I think the addiction is real, and I think she experienced these 2 things simultaneously without finding the contradiction unbearable, which tells you something about addiction that no leaflet ever quite captures. She didn't deny it. She said the word sickness in English, once, quietly. She said she had tried to stop. She said she was sorry in a way that had the weight of someone who meant it. She said she was sorry in a way that had the weight of someone who meant it. 2 hours, maybe more. I didn't hold her hand, but I didn't move away either. I watched the ceiling fan turn. Then I picked up my phone and called a grab. I've watched someone I loved die slowly. I know the difference between a person fighting something and a person losing to it. I know what it looks like from the chair beside the bed. The only thing I didn't know, in that kitchen in Hangdong on a Tuesday evening in late February, was that I'd been watching it happen again for months without finding the word for what I was seeing. I had the word now. I took my bag. I left the house. I did not look at the garden. I spent 2 weeks in a guest house near the old city. A small place off Ratchadamnoan Road. Clean enough, 800 baht a night, about €21, run by a Thai woman who asked no questions and made good coffee in the morning. I sat in my room a lot. I walked. I went to the coffee shop on Nimon and told Alistair what had happened, and he listened without interrupting, which is the best thing a person can do for a man in that position. Then he helped me count the damage. Alistair has the methodical patience of a man who spent 30 years making other people's numbers make sense. We sat at that same table where I'd first met him 14 months earlier, and we went through everything. I had my notebook. I had the Bangkok bank statements on my phone. I had the records of the international transfers from Ireland. The townhouse, 1,800,000 baht, €47,000. Gone. Not recoverable without a legal battle in Thai courts that, as Alistair put it, would cost more than the realistic value of whatever remained after the lien was resolved, if anything remained, which the lawyer I'd consulted, a Thai woman recommended by the expat forum, sharp and not unkind, said was uncertain at best. Her advice was delivered in 2 sentences. The first explained the situation. The second said, "Let it go." I let it go. The rest of the accounting, Masom surgery, 140,000 baht, €3,700. The Sinsod gold, the portion that wasn't returned, 30,000 baht, about €800. The rest I count as genuinely given in good faith, and I don't regret it. Cash withdrawn from the joint account with no clear purpose, 110,000 baht across the 14 months, €2,900. General living costs, my share of the rent before the house, food, transport, incidentals, roughly 700,000 baht over the full period, call it €18,000. Legal consultation, the lawyer's fee. The flight home. Total. Approximately €95,000. I had €110,000 left of the 198,000 I'd brought. I am 61 years old. My Irish state pension begins at 66. That's 5 years away. €110,000, spread carefully over 5 years, is about €22,000 a year, which is just under €1,900 a month, which is manageable if you're careful and live somewhere cheap, which Athlone is not exactly but is cheaper than Dublin. I flew home on a Tuesday in March. I remember the date only because it was exactly 3 years to the week since Mary died, which I noticed and then set aside because there's nothing to be done with a coincidence like that except note it and keep moving. Ciaran picked me up from the airport. He didn't say much, neither did I. He's a good lad, and he feels responsible. And I haven't told him he isn't because that would require a conversation I don't have the energy for yet. Maybe in time. There are things I want to say clearly to whoever is watching this. The gambling was real. Nok was not running a calculated long game from the moment she sold me Sayua at the Neiman market. I don't believe that. I believe she had a problem she'd been living with for 10 years, that had destroyed her first marriage, that her family had been quietly managing and covering and protecting her from, and that when I arrived with money and kindness and no knowledge of any of it, the problem continued as problems do. She may have hoped it wouldn't. She may have thought, the way addicts often think, that this time would be different, that having something worth keeping would be enough to stop. It wasn't. That's not a character indictment. That's just what addiction does. I'm not telling you this to be charitable. I'm telling you because it matters for how you understand the risk. If it had been a simple scam, woman targets foreigner, extracts money, disappears, that's a risk you can defend against. You look for the signs. You know the playbook. Knock's situation didn't have a playbook. The family was warm because they were genuinely warm, and also terrified of what they knew. May Sum held my hand in the hospital because she was grateful and also guilty. Juan came to my kitchen because she couldn't watch it continue any longer, and because she'd run out of her own money covering her sister's debts. None of these people were villains. The situation was a villain, if you want to use that word. The property law. I want to address this directly. Foreigners cannot own land in Thailand. This is not a secret. I knew it. I accepted it because I trusted Nok, and that trust turned out to be misplaced through no calculation on her part, but through a disease that had been eating through her finances for a decade before I ever arrived. Without that law, I would have lost the money from the joint account. I would have lost the surgery costs and the sin sod. I would have lost maybe 25, 30,000 euro. I would have had a house, something to come home to or sell or negotiate around. The law didn't cause the problem, but it made the problem total. That's the distinction I'd want anyone listening to understand. And then there's the other thing, the thing I find fierce inconvenient to admit. I miss it. Thailand. Not Nok. Well, Nok too, which is its own complicated business, but the place itself. The heat. The market on Sundays. The smell of the mu ping in the mornings. The coffee shop on Neiman. Even May Sum, which makes no sense and is also completely true. I miss sitting in those 2 chairs in the garden in the evening when the light went gold. I miss being somewhere nobody knew me and nobody looked at me with careful eyes. There are mornings in Athlone when I think about going back, not to her, not to any of it, just to a clean room above the power lines with a window that catches the light off a temple roof in the evenings. And I think, maybe, different city, different pace. Eyes open this time. I don't know. I genuinely don't know. A man who's already lost the most important thing in his life will convince himself anything else is manageable. That's not strength. That's just grief wearing a different coat. I know that now. Took me about 95,000 euro to learn it, but I know it. And that's Brendan's story. All of it. Here at This Is Thailand, we don't tell these stories to make you afraid of the place or the people in it. Thailand is real and complicated and beautiful and genuinely capable of giving a person something they needed. Brendan found warmth here. He found a family table and mango sticky rice and a woman who probably did love him in the space the addiction left available. None of that was fake. But if you're thinking of making the move, if you're sitting somewhere cold and quiet and wondering, there are 3 things worth carrying with you. First, property in a Thai spouse's name is not yours. Not legally, not practically. If the relationship ends badly, or if there are debts you don't know about, that asset is gone. This is not a technicality. It is the whole of the situation. Second, before you transfer significant money to anyone, understand their financial history. Not because Thai people are untrustworthy, because addiction and debt cross every culture, and the particular Thai cultural value of not discussing these things, the face-keeping, the protection of family dignity, means problems can be hidden with great warmth and genuine love, which makes them no less real. Third, find people who've been there longer than you before you commit to anything permanent, not to be talked out of things, just to have someone in your corner who knows the terrain. Brendan had Alistair for practical advice. What he didn't have was someone who knew Nok's family, who might have heard the name in a different context. That person existed. He just never thought to look for them. Stay safe. Stay wise. And if you're thinking of making the move, do your homework. Because paradise is real. So is the bill. Thanks for watching. This is Thailand.